Aloha and thank you for joining us. Today's presentation is part 2 of a 4-part series. Part 1, Preparation and Planning, presented on April 11th by the ANA Eastern Region, was recorded and will be able to be viewed in the near future at www.anaeastern.org/resources. Today's presentation will cover 6 elements of a good grant. Part 3, Project Integration, will be presented on May 9th, and Part 4, Submitting the Application, will be presented on May 25th.
Before we begin, we would like to mention that this presentation will be an audio-only preview. Till then. Also, the ANA funding opportunity announcements have been published. ANA applications are due on Thursday, June 6, 2013 at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for hand delivery and 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for electronic submissions. If you are planning to submit by hard copy, please remember to request an exemption from required electronic submission 2 weeks prior to the due date. You can go to www.achs.gov/programs/ANA to download the ANA FOAs.
Napua Harvaro and Faisal will be presenting today's webinar. My name is Keone Nunes, and I'm of Native Hawaiian, Japanese, and Portuguese ancestry. A graduate of Waianae High School and the University of Hawaii at Manoa with a bachelor's in anthropology and certification in Hawaiian language. I've worked extensively as a curriculum developer and trainer for several federal government programs, such as the Corporation for National and Community Service, the Center for Substance Abuse Prevention, and Office of Minority Health. I am also a practitioner in traditional Hawaiian tattoo practices and Hawaiian hula. I am the Executive Director for Ka'anani'o and the Regional Director for our ANA Pacific Region contract.
My name is Napua Harvaro. I am also a Native Hawaiian and graduated from the University of Hawaii with a bachelor's in communications and botany. I've worked extensively with Native Hawaiian communities through outreach presentations and workshops associated with plant identification and la'au, the practice of using Hawaiian herbs for healing. I love to hike and enjoy spending time with my family and friends, especially when food is involved. I am the training specialist for Ka'anani'o and the ANA training and technical assistance provider for the Pacific region.
Ka'anani'o is a Native Hawaiian-owned business contracted by ANA to provide training and technical assistance to the Pacific region, which includes Hawaii, American Samoa, the Commonwealth of Northern Marianas Islands, and Guam. There are 6 elements that you need to address when writing your application. Today we will discuss what the key elements are and how they relate to each other and your application.
The objective for this webinar is to help you create a compelling story by using these 6 key elements and discussing how each connects to the other. We'll talk about the importance of community goals in the planning process, community involvement in identifying the problem, how the problem is directly associated with the expected outcomes and project strategy, and the elements necessary to script the project strategy for projecting your organization's capacity.
The community to be served can consist of individuals and organizations that share a common demographic attribute, geographic location, association, etc. The target beneficiaries of the project should also be clearly described, and the relationship to the problem statement should be significant. The community description should use demographic data to indicate the extent and significance of the condition or problem being addressed. Some examples of relevant demographic information within a target group could include substance abuse, unemployment, education level, chronic illness rates, or anything that would be pertinent in giving a good foundation in which to understand the community. You should indicate where your community project will occur. This can be achieved by providing a detailed geographic description, map, or graphic of where the project is located. Will strengthen the application. The description should be clear enough so that a person unfamiliar with the region can easily understand where the community is located. Community involvement in project planning should occur from the very beginning of the planning process. It is the community that determines what is preventing certain aspects of the community from thriving. When planning a project, consider the community's long-range goals and strategic plans in developing the overall goal. The community should also be involved in project implementation while continually building and maintaining a strong partnership with your organization. One way of strengthening community bonds is to keep community members informed of project progress and outcomes.
In developing your problem statement, you will talk about the negative condition in your community that needs to be reduced or eliminated. While there are many problems that can be identified, try to define your problem statement by discussing the one current condition you will address through your project. A strong problem statement describes a condition that is in need of attention within a community that, when addressed, will help the community achieve their long-range goals. Once you have formulated your problem statement, decide which long-range community goal it best aligns with. A good way to make sure your project goal is in direct connection with your problem statement is to reverse the problem statement into a positive result. Your problem statement should be the factor that is preventing your community from reaching a specific goal, and the goal should be a solution to reducing or eliminating the problem. Keep in mind, it is important the project focuses on only one problem identified by the community in order to ensure the project is focused. Your problem statement should be compelling and urgent. It should show the condition to be addressed as well as a description of the challenges standing in the way of addressing the problem. Let's take a look at this problem statement. Culturally inappropriate re-entry services result in the disproportionate number of Native Hawaiian recidivism rates in Hawaii state prison system.
The project goal is the basis for determining the expected outcome of your project. The project goal should describe an improved condition that will exist at the end of the project and clearly indicates how it relates to one or more of the community's long-range goals. Expected outcomes are the achievement targets that indicate progress towards your goal and improve the specific condition identified in your problem statement. Results or outputs include activities completed and materials produced such as workshops, courses, training sessions, curriculum, etc. Benefits are positive changes derived from completing activities and achieving the objectives of the project, and should contribute to an improvement in the conditions identified in the problem statement. Impact is an overall change that will occur as a consequence of the entire project. It is necessary to identify and include effective tools and criteria to monitor and evaluate your expected outcomes in order to show the accomplishment of the project and project progress. In this example, a project focused on reducing the recidivism rate of incarcerated Native Hawaiians would likely use the reduced number of criminal acts that results in rearrest, reconviction, and or return to prison of project participants as the expected outcome of the project. The decrease of reoffenders will indicate the outcome of this specific project.
The project strategy includes your project approach and objective work plan. You should provide detailed information of your implementation plan from day one of the project start date through to the end of the project's conclusion. This includes all project activities and a discussion of how your project will be implemented. Community resources contribute to the strength of the organization. The ability for an organization to communicate with and involve the community is essential. The strategy or approach should entail everything needed to implement a project plan that will accomplish the objectives and address the problem. Develop monitoring and evaluation tools to measure project progress. The development of a plan to sustain a project with its positive impacts should be included.
Organizational capacity includes ability to administer and implement the project, connection with the community, experiences with comparable projects, staffing plans, and internal controls. Staffing and position data are required. Describe the general time frame to hire staff and explain how the current and future staff will manage the proposed project. Also include full project position descriptions. If you have identified individuals to fill key positions, include brief biographies and/or resumes. Submit these as attachments. If your project requires the expertise of consultants, include information on their role in the project and also include their qualifications pertinent to the project. It is important to remember when developing job descriptions that you list the qualifications necessary to effectively do the job that is required, such as special certifications, higher education degrees, licensing, etc. Project descriptions discussed in this section must match the positions in the OWP and itemized budget. The organizational capacity should reflect all of the aspects previously stated: inclusion of the community, development of the problem, the expected outcomes, clearly laid out strategy, and identification of the resources necessary for the successful completion of the project. Remember that the inclusion of a clear and concise project strategy should support the capacity of your organization to implement the project.
Assessing your required resources for a project is necessary for projecting how much a project will cost, how much of the cost your tribe or organization can cover, and how much of the project costs need to be supported from outside sources. Remember, when preparing a budget, the funds you are requesting need to clearly be necessary, reasonable, allowable, and appropriate for the scope of the proposed project. Some examples of resources needed to complete a project are funds or cash, staff, volunteers, beneficiaries, participants, partnerships, leveraged resources, facilities, materials, and infrastructure. Again, remember that the budget should connect with all of the other elements of the application in order to be successful. That covers the 6 key elements to a good application. Now we will open this section up for questions and answers. Just some instructions before we begin. If you would like to ask a question, click the Raise Hand button in the participant box on the left side of your screen. We'll call on you in the order that you have raised your hand. When we call your name, type your question into the chat box and we'll do our best to answer it. Once you feel your question has been answered, press the Raise Hand button and lower your hand so that the next person can be identified. The Raise Hand button looks like a hand icon. Does everyone see that? If you do, please, oh, never mind. Some people have already raised their hand. So if you have raised your hand, then type your question into the chat box. Okay, Kai, I see that you have a question. Can you please type your question into the chat box?
Okay, Kai, your question is, do we have a projected start date for those granted awards and the projected award date? The start date is covered within the FOAs, and the start date is exactly the same as previous years. So the start date will be September 30th. And the award dates will be previous to that. Sandy, your question is, can we get access to the slides or included text for future reference? And the answer is yes. We will have the entire recorded text and slide for your viewing within about a week. And Curry, you have one. Let's see. And can you please type in your question again? It doesn't, it showed up, then it disappeared for a second. just for clarification, the language grants have a start date of August 1st. The number of impact indicators, there was a question of number of impact indicators for this year. The impact indicators that you include within your application is just one. Well, the question was, excuse me, there was some confusion last year about the number of impact indicators. Was it just one, or can you include as many as you want? There's some confusion. Okay, you retyped it twice. Thanks. Yeah, there is one impact indicator that you include within your application, and that impact indicator has to have direct result to your project. Now, within the impact indicator, there are different ways of looking at it. You have to include a baseline, which is what the situation is like prior to the start of the project, the end of project result, and 3 years after the project, what do you foresee to be an impact with that? Okay. Mara, you have a question, and we are looking for it right now. Do you have any good resources that discuss barriers and solutions for Native Americans who are grant seekers, providers, outside of ANA scope of focus in their communities? I find surprisingly few resources in my online searches. There are a lot of organizations that can be resources. A lot of the ANA former grantees can be looked upon as very good resources for barriers and solutions to Native Americans. I know you're looking at outside the ANA scope of focus, but you know, to be really honest with you, that's our focus, and maybe when you make contact, when you connect with other organizations, they can expand your scope of grant seekers or providers that is focusing on different elements of ANA. There is regional virtual communities, and that's one way that you might find partners that you can discuss things. And go to your regional websites, and you can join the regional virtual communities, and hopefully you can get some satisfaction to what you're looking for. Luis, there is a page limit for the application. It has an overall page limit of 150 pages. What I would suggest is to keep your project description short and concise. And that's because it will focus your project needs. It will focus what your project is trying to achieve. I would not say that it's a requirement as far as that's concerned, but I can say that when you see an application that is concise and to the point, you kind of get the idea of what is necessary for them to be funded, and that's really important. Anna, your question is, the new rules say that board members cannot be project staff. can they be consultants to the project? One of the things that is very difficult is to not look at where there is some form of conflict of interest. And as board members, oftentimes boards are not allowed to be project staff. Some boards, the way that it's set up, can be, but it's always an issue of conflict of interest. I think anyone who is paid on the project to be really clear about conflict should not be a paid member of the project. Hey, Dolly, you have a question. We're pulling it up right now. Oh, you haven't typed it yet. Okay. Is there anyone else with questions? Please raise your hand. You know, just getting back to Anna Curry's question of impact indicators, you can have more than one impact indicator, but you have to have at least one impact indicator that is directly a result of the project. Somebody's question. I don't. Okay, Maria, you have a question. Are you aware of whether school foundations can apply on behalf of their district charter school? I haven't been through the RFP yet, sorry, but I thought you might know. If it is a native school, then it is possible for you to go through that. There are native schools that go through that. If you have a charter school that services native communities, then I would say to go through the charter school board, because that would clarify who the target population would be and what the project would be utilized for. Okay. You want to answer? Okay, Kikai has a question.
Okay, Kikai, sorry, Keone can't see your question, but I can, so I'll read it out. Are you aware of whether school foundations can apply on behalf of a district charter school? I just haven't been through the, oh, sorry, that's coming under Kikai's name. Okay. Are you aware of whether the school foundations can apply on behalf of a district charter school? Just haven't been through the RFP yet, sorry, but thought you might know.
Yeah, I think we already answered that question. I got your question, Kikai, now. When will Ka'anani'au be accepting draft applications for review and constructive feedback? As soon as you have something substantial for us, I would really advise all of you, regardless of what region you are in, to read the FOAs thoroughly, backwards and forwards, because it is necessary for you to use that as the foundation for your application process. And once that happens, it is going to be necessary for you to write your application along those lines. And once that's done, by all means, send it into us as soon as you can. Please also, for our region and every other region, I think I can speak for all the technical assistance providers in saying that please allow us enough time to give you valid, substantial feedback. And please allow yourself enough time to make any corrections that you need after getting our feedback, because it is very, very important that you go into the application process without feeling rushed or feeling too anxious about the whole process. So it is really important for you to get those things into us with enough time for us to give you valid feedback and for you to make the adjustments necessary in your minds to make a competitive application. Anna, you had a question. What if the charter school serves Native communities, but the board is not more than 50% Native Hawaiian? That's a really good question. It is within the new FOAs. There are certain areas that I think needs to be clarified with individual organizations. Sometimes it's very difficult to justify having a charter school serving Native communities, but not comprising the majority of Native people within the board. That's something that probably you can give us a call. We can talk it over with the people in ANA and see what the specifics are concerned with your organization is. Dolly, you have your hand up. Did you have a question? Okay. Sandy, I notice you have your hand up and you're entering a question. Can you provide another example of a problem statement reversed to show a solution? Sandy, can you provide us with a problem statement? Then I can show you how you can make it into a goal, a project goal. Okay. While Sandy is doing that, are there any other questions? I know, Dolly, you have your hand raised. Unfortunately, I don't see a question coming up from you. As soon as I see it, we will address it. Okay, Kekai, you had a question. So the September 30th start date for language project is likely, even despite the late release of the FOA and pushback application review process. No, for the language projects, I clarified myself earlier. The language projects will start on August 1st. And that's what we're getting from ANAN. So I believe that that is going to still be valid. Yes, Kekai, August 1st. Okay, we're still waiting for some questions to be entered into the chat. Okay, the problem statement is lack of access to cultural education for the I know what you mean, Chamorro communities, causes a lack of sense of identity and self-esteem in the community. So how you can put that into a goal would be that cultural education, cultural education for Chamorro communities will be established for the diasporic communities, for the diasporic Chamorro communities. And then you can address, you don't need to address the lack of sense of identity and self-esteem, because if you turn that into a project goal, it would automatically address sense of identity and self-esteem. Does that make any sense, Sandy? I think if you address the first part, the question was, please elaborate. If you address the first part of your problem statement, a lack of access to cultural education for diasporic Chamorro communities, then you will address the second part, which you state causes a lack of sense of identity and self-esteem in the community. Diasporic communities oftentimes have that problem of not having access to culturally based projects. And so if you start looking at that, then you can probably address the second part within your outcomes. And that's why I think if you address the first part, then it's automatically going to address the sense of identity and self-esteem. Jan, I have a question from you. Does ANA consider financial literacy a legitimate form of economic development? Yet that is definitely one essential part of economic development that is will be looked upon as something that would qualify for funding. Okay, I know Dolly is still writing, and could you please type in, Dolly, could you please type in your question into the chat box one more time and we'll attempt to answer it. If any of you have more questions, please raise your hand and type it into the chat box and we'll get to it as fast as possible. We have 10 more minutes remaining in this webinar, and we'd like to be able to answer as many questions as we can. While we're waiting, I would encourage you to please look at the FOAs, read the FOAs as much as you can before you start putting everything together. Once you have your project already planned out, you should have your project already planned out. Once you start doing that, look at these 6 elements that will make your application a little bit better and a little bit more competitive. I would strongly suggest that all of you do that prior to sending in the applications for your technical assistance providers to review. Okay, Dolly, we're still not getting a question in the chat box from you. If you want to email a question later, please feel free to do so. And the email is Keone, Keone, at KAANANIAU.com. I know it's a little bit long, and I'll repeat it. KEONE at KAANANIAU.com. Okay, Kikai, you had a question, and the question is, for the current status of language description, page 18 of the FOA, does that go into the narrative or to the attachments section? You can write it as part of the community description, and you can elaborate on it a little bit within the project description. If you have things such as surveys or things of that nature that would sort of strengthen your descriptions and the status of your language, I think it's really important for you to include those things that is within the other parts of the attachment section of the application. I'm looking over it as I'm speaking, so and it should be current. For those of you who are interested in applying for language grants, the information should be current within 36 months. So again, if you have the current status, describe it within your project description. If you have the stats and everything that is necessary to be the foundation for those statements, you attach it, you connect it to the attachments. Remember, there's a 150-page limit, and that includes attachments this year. So just be very mindful of your application and the page number you're at. Okay, it seems like no one else has any questions. I will hand it over to Napua to close out our session.
Okay, before we close out, I'd like to make a few short announcements. Next week's webinar on May 2nd will be entitled Supporting and Empowering Dads. And if you want to continue watching our webinar series on application development, Part 3 will be about application integration and cohesion, and that will be happening on May 9th. And Part 4, which will be airing May 25th, will be about submitting your application. One other announcement: after this webinar, we'll send an email to everyone who registered that will include the project integration matrix that is aligned with the webinar that we featured today, to show you how the 6 key elements are interconnected and work together. The email will also include a link to a quick evaluation survey, and we'd really appreciate your feedback. If someone sent you the link to this webinar and you attended without registering, it's okay too. Just send an email to Matt, M-A-T-T, @kaananiau.com. That's M-A-T-T @KAANANIAU.com, requesting the webinar materials, and we'll reply with the attached materials as soon as possible. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Aloha.